The gleaming corridors of Gate B-23 buzzed with activity as Flight 2187 prepared for departure to San Francisco. Zara Mitchell, her navy blue uniform crisp and badge gleaming with senior flight attendant 15 years of service, watched the passengers file through the jet bridge. "Good morning. Welcome aboard," Zara greeted, her warm smile never wavering. Yet beneath her professional demeanor, she noticed subtle signs that made her skin prickle. A man in an expensive charcoal suit, seat 3A, Mr. Thompson, according to the manifest, kept throwing sharp glances at the woman ahead of him. The woman, dressed in a tailored burgundy blazer, carried herself with quiet confidence. Dr. Sarah Okoro, 3 billion. Zara noted how Mr. Thompson's jaw clenched when he realized their seat assignments. His knuckles whitened around his leather briefcase handle. "Is everything all right, sir?" Zara asked, maintaining eye contact. "Perfect," he replied tersely, though his tone suggested otherwise. As more passengers boarded, the air grew thick with unspoken tension. Zara caught knowing looks from her colleague, Ramon, who was checking tickets. They'd both seen this before, the telltale signs of trouble brewing. Zara took a deep breath, preparing herself for whatever might unfold during this 5-hour flight. The first hint of trouble erupted 20 minutes into the flight. Zara was checking seatbelts when Mr. Thompson's voice cut through the cabin noise, sharp and deliberate. "I paid premium for this seat. I shouldn't have to sit next to someone who probably got an upgrade through some diversity program," he said loudly, not even trying to lower his voice. Dr. Okoro looked up from her medical journal, her expression composed but her hands gripping the pages tighter. "Sir, I purchased my ticket just like you." Right, Thompson sneered, shifting away from her. "And I suppose you're going to tell me you're actually a doctor too? Reading a medical journal doesn't make you one." "I am Dr. Sarah Okoro, chief of neurosurgery at..." "Save it," Thompson interrupted, pressing the call button repeatedly. "Flight attendant, I demand a seat change. Now." Nearby passengers turned their heads, shock and disgust visible on their faces. A young boy in row 4 tugged his mother's sleeve, asking why the man was being mean. Dr. Okoro straightened in her seat, her voice steady but firm. "Mr. Thompson, my credentials and right to be here are not up for debate. Your behavior is both unprofessional and unwarranted." Zara approached, her steps measured and purposeful. The tension crackled in the air like static before a storm. She'd handled situations like this before, but something about Thompson's smug expression told her this was about to become much more than a routine passenger dispute. Zara positioned herself between the seats, angling her body to create a subtle barrier. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, though she'd heard every word through the quiet cabin. "Yes, there is," Thompson snapped. "I want to be moved away from." This situation, he gestured dismissively toward Dr. Okoro. 2 rows ahead, a silver-haired woman stood up. "I heard everything, and I'll be happy to make a formal statement about his discriminatory behavior." Ramon appeared at Zara's side, tablet in hand. "Captain Martinez would like to speak with you, Mr. Thompson, and I've already documented the incident." "This is ridiculous," Thompson sputtered. "You're all overreacting. I simply..." Made racist remarks to a fellow passenger, interrupted a man in a business suit. "I recorded the whole thing. My firm handles discrimination cases." Dr. Okoro remained dignified, though Zara noticed her hands trembling slightly. A flight attendant from economy, Nina, slipped forward and quietly placed a cup of tea on Dr. Okoro's tray table with a supportive smile. "Mr. Thompson," Zara said, her voice carrying through the cabin, "our airline has zero tolerance for discriminatory behavior. You have 2 choices. You can apologize to Dr. Okoro and remain silent for the duration of this flight, or we can divert to Chicago where authorities will escort you off." The cabin hummed with murmurs of approval. A teenager pulled out her phone, clearly texting about the unfolding drama. An elderly man nodded firmly, his wedding ring catching the light as he gripped his armrest, ready to stand if needed. Thompson glanced around, finally sensing the wall of solidarity building against him. His face reddened, but Zara could see the moment he realized he'd lost control of the situation. The power dynamic had shifted, and he was no longer the one calling the shots. "I'll have your job for this," Thompson growled at Zara. "Do you know who I am? I'm Vice President at..." Sir Ramon cut in, holding up his tablet. "We've pulled up your company's anti-discrimination policies. Would you like me to contact your HR department directly?" Thompson's face drained of color. Captain Martinez's voice crackled through the intercom. "This is your captain speaking. We're receiving clearance to land in Chicago if a certain passenger cannot comply with our safety and respect protocols." A woman across the aisle leaned forward. "Dr. Okoro, Weren't you the surgeon who developed that new brain tumor removal technique? My sister's life was saved by your research at Johns Hopkins. Yes, I led that team, Dr. Okoro replied quietly. We've helped over 300 patients so far. The revelation rippled through first class. Another passenger pulled up a medical journal on his tablet. Look, she's speaking at the International Neurosurgery Conference next week. Keynote speaker. Zara stood firm. Mr. Thompson, this is your final warning. The FBI takes air travel incidents very seriously, and we have multiple witnesses. You can't do this to me, Thompson protested, but his voice had lost its edge. Nina returned with forms. These are incident reports. Everyone who witnessed the harassment can fill them out. They'll be submitted to our legal department and the aviation authorities. Thompson watched as passengers reached for the forms. The businessman with the recording raised his phone meaningfully. The silver-haired woman had already started writing her statement. The choice is yours, Zara said. But in about 10 minutes we'll be past our decision point for Chicago. After that, this becomes a federal case. Dr. Okoro spoke up, her voice carrying authority. I don't want your apology, Mr. Thompson. What I want is for you to understand that your assumptions about who belongs where are not just wrong, they're dangerous. They deny humanity to people who save lives, create art, teach children, and yes, fly first class. The cabin fell silent, waiting for Thompson's next move. Thompson slumped in his seat, defeat written across his face. Fine. I apologize, he muttered, barely audible. The airline will still file a report, Zara announced, and you'll be placed on our no-fly list pending review. The silver-haired woman turned in her seat. Young lady, please add my contact information. I serve on the state medical board, and we take discrimination against healthcare professionals very seriously. Ramon collected statements while Nina distributed complimentary drinks to the cabin. Passengers began sharing their own stories. A teacher spoke about classroom diversity. A tech executive discussed workplace inclusion programs. The businessman who recorded the incident slipped his card to Dr. Okoro. My daughter dreams of becoming a surgeon. Would you mind if she wrote to you? Dr. Okoro smiled, her professional composure softening. I would be honored to mentor her. Thompson sat rigid, watching his fellow passengers unite in friendship and respect around him. His phone buzzed an email from his company's HR department. His face turned ashen as he read it. Looks like consequences arrive faster than expected, Zara remarked, noting his expression. She turned to the cabin. Thank you all for standing up for what's right. This is how change happens, one moment, one choice, one person at a time. The rest of the flight proceeded smoothly, with Thompson sitting in humiliated silence while Dr. Okoro received notes of admiration and support from throughout the plane. As passengers disembarked in San Francisco, Dr. Okoro paused to thank Zara. Not everyone would have handled that so professionally. Change happens in the sky, and on the ground, Zara replied, handing her a business card. The airline wants to feature this story in our employee training. Your voice matters. 6 months later, Zara spotted a familiar face on a magazine cover. Dr. Okoro, speaking out about inclusion in medicine. The article mentioned the flight incident, now used as a case study in airline customer service training. Better still, Zara noticed fewer incidents like Thompson's. Word had spread and passengers seemed more ready to stand together against discrimination. The silver-haired medical board member had kept her promise, pushing for new anti-discrimination protocols in healthcare. Walking through the terminal for her next flight, Zara smiled at a group of young black girls watching planes take off. The sky, she knew, belonged to everyone.